Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm a little bit rusty. It's been a little while, Scott, since I did an interview. But I'm here today with Scott Goff, who is a marketing coordinator at Gibson Connect in Tennessee. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. Gibson Connect has been doing some really cool things down there in Tennessee. You know, you're a subsidiary of Gibson Electric, which has more than approaching 90 years of experience as a electric membership corporation, I think is what the EMC stands for typically, but many think of just rural electric co-ops. So I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about Gibson Electric and how it got into the fiber game for actual broadband service to the home.
Yeah, so like you said, we're a rural provider. You know, we started back in 2017, and we really got into it for our members. So we live in an area and we serve an area that is or has historically been unserved or underserved pretty significantly. So I've been here for about 2 years. And when I first started, you know, they were showing me around and they were saying, you know, here in this area, like no one's ever had broadband in some of these areas. And, you know, before we got there, and, you know, their only option was whatever they could get on their phone, which, you know, being way out there isn't much, or satellite internet, which is basically DSL. And so, you know, once we could start serving people, that's when we really jumped in to serve those folks and to serve our electric members.
One of the things I saw that was interesting is what I often expect when I look into this, which it suggested that roughly half of your members fit that description where they had no option. But among those that did have high-speed internet access options, they weren't always super happy with it. They were looking for, you know, I think something that was a little bit closer to home and something that gave them some different options, I guess.
Yeah, and we hear that quite a bit. You know, I mean, we do have competition from, in a few areas, we've got some competition from a local provider or a regional provider. You know, we've got a couple of national providers in our area as well. But yeah, I mean, people appreciate having a local provider, someone where like our whole support team is based right here in Trenton, Tennessee, like where our corporate headquarters is. But I think more than that, you know, that kind of mentality, that culture, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, of being a co-op is really deeply ingrained because we, you know, our parent company is the electric cooperative. It's really deeply ingrained in how we operate and how we think. And so providing internet that really makes people's life better, providing internet that's super reliable, it's 100% fiber. And so, you know, it's nice and fast. It's super reliable. We work hard to keep it up. And I think honestly, more than us being local, the fact that the internet doesn't go out all the time, you know, the fact that we'll go out and make it right, you know, if we need to, and we don't do contracts. We don't do that. Oh, hey, you can get a temporary deal and then you're 6 months from now, it's double what it used to be. And now you're, you know, we don't kind of, you know, all that stuff. I think that really factors in as much or more than us being a local provider.
Yeah, for reliability, I'm always curious, and I didn't prep you on this. Maybe you probably have it on the back of your head. Do you know if you're mostly using the poles that you use for electric, or did you go underground for substantial parts of it? How did you end up in terms of aerial versus buried?
We pretty much follow what the electric lines do. So if the electric lines are up on a pole, we go up on a pole. If they're underground, we go underground. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty simple decision-making process, and for the most part, it's not 100%. You know, it's not every single time, but the vast majority of the time, that's what we do.
Sure. And then I am curious, is this something where the utility was using fiber internally for like, I mean, I hear a lot of places they started doing in the 90s, and then like you said, you didn't have authorization from the state to offer it to residents until more recently, but presumably you've had fiber operations for a long time for substations and things like that.
Yeah. So if we go back before 2017, we started doing fiber to interconnect all of our substations. And then people would ask, hey, can I get on that? Hey, can I get on that?
Right. And just let me on. No one will notice.
Yeah. And so we had this pretty robust fiber ring built out, you know, again, as part of serving our members to make sure that we could monitor our substations better. And then we kind of piggybacked off of that to start providing residential and business. And now we kind of do a little bit of everything. You know, we do residential, small business, big business, dark fiber, leasing, you know, some of the stuff the guys are talking about. I'm like, I don't understand how half of that works, but that's cool that we're doing it, you know? So yeah, it's become a really good a really good way to serve our community and to serve our members and our subscribers.
I saw that you successfully won an auction for the Connect America Fund round 2 back in the day. And I'm curious, I know that when you have the kind of rural territory that you have, it's very costly to get out to everyone. You need some government support for that. Have you been able to get to most of your members, all of your members? Where are you with that?
Yeah, so so Tennessee regulations are a little unique. So we have a carve out in some of our areas where we can't serve our electric members because of those rules. But everybody we can serve in our electric footprint, we've built out to. And so that the big bulk of it is done. We've got some areas where we've expanded up in Kentucky. And I say up in Kentucky, we are in far, or some people here say extreme far Western Kentucky. It's sort of just that little bit on the end there. And so we've been able to expand in a few places because of grants and funding like that so that we can, support those areas. But, by and large, our focus is on that main electric footprint and where we can serve inside of there. And yeah, we've got everybody's house is able to be hooked up. So just give us a call.
Well, I saw that a lot of people had signed up. You have, like you said, there's areas that are off limits per state law that you are not permitted to serve. It looked like you had about 39,000 members, and having more than 20,000 people signed up at the beginning of this year, that certainly seems like a successful launch and approach.
Yeah. And honestly, I couldn't take credit for it on the marketing side, even if I wanted to. That really what that comes down to is 80 plus years, almost 90 years of faithful service by the electric cooperative to build that deep level of trust in our communities with our folks. And then everybody here from operations to tech support and customer service, member service, they've all worked really hard to provide an incredibly high level of service to our folks. And really that's what you see that come from. I've worked at several different places before. I've never worked at a place where customers and people in the community, almost to a person, are very happy with what we're doing and very happy with us. And it's been really great because then, now we just keep building and try to do a little bit better every day, build on our successes. And yeah, it's been successful, but again, as much as I would love to take credit for it and say it was my amazing marketing, it was really just a lot of hard work from a lot of people here.
It's funny because I remember talking to someone who is marketing in a similar situation with a different network, but that was beloved by the community. And they were saying at a certain point, you're not even really trying to market necessarily to get more subscribers. It's marketing to continue that loyalty and to make sure that people just think very fondly of you because you become so successful. There's not that many new subscribers you could get. I'm sure you're still growing, but you'll be running into that problem at some point here.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up because we are starting to shift gears from like building and rapid growth into, obviously we still want to grow, but really we're starting to shift gears into how do we make sure that we retain the subscribers that we have, improve their experience, improve their level of service, make sure everybody stays happy with what they've got, because we are starting to reach kind of the upper limits of what we can, as far as a take rate goes, of, what we can do.
Right. Yeah. Because I know that you divided into zones and those early zones have got to be pretty saturated. Yeah. So I'm curious, one of the things that I'll say for people that are interested, we're going to talk a little bit about a specific Calix service that you use, vendor that you use. I've talked about Calix a lot before. But first, I always want to ask you, is there an anecdote that stands out to you when you think about why what you're doing is meaningful? You get up in the morning and you're like, what, am I really helping people out? Like, what has the network done that's improved lives in the region?
Yeah, so I've got two, and they're like, I love telling these stories. So the first one is, like I said, I've been here for about 2 years, and like when I first started, they did an amazing job of kind of helping me understand the company and where we operate, and again, being a city boy, like kind of understanding what rural life and rural internet looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were out in an area up in Kentucky, one of the outside fiber guys, and he was showing me, folks out here have never had broadband before, and here's how we hook them up and go through cornfields and gullies, all that. And he was telling me, he said, some of these folks have only had internet with us for 3 or 4 months, but when their power goes out, they're calling tech support and asking when the Wi-Fi is going to be back on. And, he's like, hang on, you haven't had, and I love it because it's clearly just become another utility, right? And it's become so quickly, it's become such a core part of their life that, they're going to, okay, when's the water coming back on? When's the electricity coming back on? When's my Wi-Fi coming back on?
Right. And not in that order. Like you said, I've heard this before with some of the fires out in Washington State I've heard some of the public utility districts out there reporting the same thing where they're telling people, gee, like we lost so many lines of poles that it's going to be a couple of weeks. And they're like, what about the internet?
Yeah.
It's like, well, it goes in the same poles.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to get you Wi-Fi if we don't have power.
Right.
Yeah. And so that, to me, that was just great. You see that people are really loving the service. It makes you feel good. I think the other one is, so this is my first broadband job. I came out of higher ed, and a little less positivity in higher ed on social media,
Right.
which is fine. This is part of it. But I got here, people were talking about how we get complaints all the time on our Facebook page and stuff. And I was like, all right. So I started to look into it to figure out what's going on. And I would say when I first started and still today, our number one complaint on Facebook is, why can't you come down to my house? Why can't we get your service? I can see, we have people all the time. I can see the fiber line on the pole. Why, can you just 500 feet? I'm right here. And we have to go into the whole, state regulations. We'd love to serve you, all that stuff. And again, to me, it just shows we're doing a really good job of serving our subscribers and serving our members when the biggest complaint we have is, I want your service. Why can't I have it?
Right. Well, and I'll say that. I mean, I think often if you're working for a co-op in this situation, it's difficult to necessarily tell people to be political, but people need to let their elected officials know that that's an issue. And then elected officials can decide whether or not they want to wrestle with it. But if they don't hear about it, if the utility is the only one hearing the complaint, that's going to be an issue. So I always encourage people. There will be some people who I'm sure dig into this because they're trying to figure out how to get you to connect them. And they should talk to their elected officials about making sure the law is appropriate.
Yeah. And that's up to them. We just sort of let them know, hey, here's why. And just sort of leave it up to them if they want to do something about that. We have had some people that have I've called the mayor, I've called the city council people, I've gone in and done the legwork. They're ready to meet with you now.
Right.
I'm going, okay, thank you.
Yeah. And the problem is, I know that you have some bigger relationships at times where, there's a real challenge. And I suspect that the state law at stake here is one that is making sure that the telephone co-ops have their area. We have a historic policy problem of having areas that we kind of had sectioned off for good reason. And we need to make sure that we don't suddenly change the economics in a way that puts an entire network at risk. So we need the policymakers to be making hard decisions, but also I think recognizing that there might need to be additional changes in coming years, and we should roll it out from time, over time. But that's above, I think, your pay grade, and I don't know enough about it to really shoot my mouth off any more than that. So,
yeah. I was about to say,
I don't want to get you in trouble.
No, I was about to say, I think, of course, we're happy to, we can work inside of any regulations or any boxes that are drawn, but I'm definitely, I'm not informed enough and definitely not smart enough to make any sort of recommendations for what people should do. I just sort of pass along what I know.
Right. So I wanted to then dig in, and I'll note for people who are listening, I have a tremendous fondness for Calix. I'm a fan of a lot of the vendors. I just happen to be in Minnesota where Optical Solutions had been purchased by Calix. I know a lot of the people, and I just this week was out at Calix's Plymouth, their big location there, because they're big supporters of our Tribal Broadband Bootcamp. So I've used the E7 platform, but I'm still learning about different services that they offer. This is something we're trying to dig into a little bit on the show to get a better sense of what goes into modern ISPs. And so I have never even heard of Calix Engagement Cloud, but you use it, and I think that there's probably similar tools out there for others. But I want to get a sense of what Calix is doing for you with this engagement cloud business.
Yeah, and it's super helpful. We use it all the time. I would say probably in the last 8 to 10 months, we've really kind of put the pedal to the metal, and really using it more and more. And now we're starting to use feedback that we got from previous campaigns into our new campaigns. We've got actually an 1 gig upgrade campaign that's going to launch next week. And we're taking stuff that we've learned from using Engagement Cloud before. We're taking Engagement Cloud data, combining it with some of our Google Analytics information, and we're sort of rolling that all up together. This sounds like I'm some amazing marketer. We're still trying to figure out all this and how to really use it to the best of its ability. But it's been great to leverage a tool like that and to have so much good data. So just a kind of quick overview, what we have access to through that is how our subscribers use the network. Are they...
Which is, sorry, I just want to make sure it's very clear. I think you're talking more about sort of like how often they use it and what general types of services. You're not talking about like, oh, they've watched this video on Netflix or something like that.
No. Yes. Just to be clear, it's more of like general network usage. So, like our tech support team, if someone calls in and they're having issues, they can see, oh, hey, look, it looks like you've got, we can't really tell what it is, but it looks like you've got something on the edge of your network that's just out of range. Is that the TV you're talking about? Okay, you probably need an extender or something like that. Or one of my supervisors was trying to figure out why his internet was getting bogged down, and they have a little app that has all that information that you can see for your own network. Turns out he had a Wi-Fi DVD player that, because the Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi on there was fairly bad, the network was going, oh, okay, we got to go down to the lowest common denominator. And so now everybody's using 10-year-old Wi-Fi.
Oh,
quality.
right. Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, I guess I should turn that off. It's that sort of stuff. No, we can't see, and we don't want to see specifics on exactly where you're going and what you're doing and all that sort of stuff. But we don't get any of that. For Engagement Cloud, it's really just that, hey, we've got folks that are kind of doing gaming related stuff. They have PlayStations or whatever, or they're, all that. So we can look at that and we can use that and sort of say, oh, hey, if we're doing a promotion around, let's say, work from home or gamers or stuff like that, we can use some of that information to figure out, who's really a good candidate for an email, or a postcard.
Yeah, I think some of this, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how long this has been in the works, but I know that Calix, Optical Solutions and then Calix was huge in the Dakotas, within North Dakota in particular, when they were building out. And that was the first place that I heard of these stories from some of the marketers up there. And I can't remember who it was, but one of the co-ops had made it a practice of every like December, they would reach out to the subscribers and say, hey, for the season, for the holiday over Christmas, we're going to be boosting you to the next level. And then people would sort of go at that point, maybe from like 10 megabits to 15 or 15 to 30 or something like that to the next plan. Mm-hmm. And then in January, they would say, hey, like the promotion's over. But if you got used to those higher speeds, mm-hmm. Here's what it would take to continue to have that level of performance. And I know that there was great relationships before. And so I wonder, is that like a part of the Engagement Cloud to make that easier?
Yeah. So I'll give prime example is what we're rolling out next week. So we try to figure out who would be a good candidate for upgrading. So we have two services. We are two residential tiers. We do 250 and 1 gig. And so we wanted to see, hey, which one of or what group of our 250 customers would be potentially good candidates for gig service for this promotion.
Right. So sorry to interrupt, but I imagine you could tell a difference between someone who's gaming all day long or just using the network and saturating 250 likely, but regularly pushing the limits versus someone who's checking their email once a day.
Yeah, and that sort of goes into it. And, we can see, and again, we can't on the marketing side of things with Engagement Cloud, I can't see what you have hooked up to your network, but I can see, there's a group of people who have at least 10 devices on their network. Mm-hmm. And you're on the 250 plan, you got 10, 15, 20 devices. Probably, that's one of the factors of that. Are you using your data, a lot of data? Again, I can't see exactly what you're doing. I just know that you're using a lot of it. So we're going to put you in that category. And then, then we can send that off and we're going to send them postcards and emails and stuff. I will say one of the things about kind of going back to how we use data as part of, just part of being a co-op, we have a really strong kind of customer-focused privacy policy. And so that there's a lot of limitations on what, even if I could see the data, there's limitations on what I can do with it because we know it's best for our subscribers, it's best for our members if we protect their data, we protect their personal identifiable information. And so, even as we talk through all of this, there's a lot of this too, where I've talked to our network guys who wrote that policy and I'm like, hey, can I do this? And they go, no, you can't do that. Okay. And so just sort of as, that's a reality for us, but also, just if you're for folks that may either be in a similar situation to us where they do have strong, customer focused privacy policies, or they don't necessarily have access to all this data, you can still do a lot of good campaigns. You can still drive a lot of business results, even without having all the super granular detail that you may want to have.
Yeah, sometimes I think people get distracted by too much detail. You got to figure out what's the relevant. detail.
Yeah, and you can easily, we over-engineered a campaign earlier in the year and we saw 0 results. It's like, okay, I think we maybe when I went a little overboard on the targeting.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and the last question I had for you is in terms of electric co-ops. I mean, here we are. Traditionally, we talk about marketing as being one of the hardest things for co-ops to do because you have 90 years of experience typically of not marketing. Right, effectively, because you have a monopoly service territory for something that people desperately need. Now you're in an area where at least a substantial number of people have choices. So internet access has some similarities. I feel like, like Mark Twain says, it rhymes with the past. It's not necessarily replicating it. But I'm curious. We see, I think there's more than 700 electric co-ops, and I think more than 250, 300-ish maybe are as aggressive in terms of trying to get out to all their customers with fiber. From the 2 years you've spent in the field there, what do you see that in terms of explains why we don't see more of the electric co-ops digging into this?
It's a really good question. I think first and foremost, our decision to get into this was really a decision based on what's going to serve our members well. And so I've got to imagine that for the majority of them, they've looked into it, and that's part of the decision process. I mean, it's part of the decision process for all co-ops. Is this good for the member? That's a lot of our decision-making process, not just what campaigns are we going to run, what products are we going to offer, but how, we mentioned a little bit earlier about with data stuff, but even beyond that, like how are we going to do these campaigns? Is the way that we're doing them, good for the member, or is it something we need to avoid? And so, I think that's a big part of it. Also, it's a big undertaking. I've seen how hard our folks have worked for years to build this out and serve these folks well. And to try to find that balance, like you mentioned, the sales thing, being in a co-op kind of cuts both ways. It provides incredible branding, incredible trust with your customers or with your members and your subscribers. But on the other side, it's a little harder for us to sell stuff because it's just not part of our DNA. And anything that feels salesy, is kind of, I don't know if we want to do that. And so for us, when it comes to selling, we really try to do it less like selling and more of advising or just giving them information and letting them know, hey, we think this would be a good fit for you, And so I think there's probably a lot that goes into it. I'm just from our perspective from our experience on that, I can see it's a lot of work. It's a very different business, and you got to start with what's good for your membership first. And, if your membership either votes and says, we don't want that, or we don't want you guys to do that, or if they determine internally that, hey, it's just not going to be a good return for the members, then it's just not going to be a good fit. And that's okay.
Yeah, I'm reminded that, and I'm curious if you heard any of these kind of horror stories, but for people who are wondering why some electric co-ops have decided not to do it, you have to remember that some of these got involved with propane. Some of them got involved with satellite contracts in trying to get people services decades ago that didn't go well. And it's not always easy to tell what is the thing that is a multi-decade investment, because a lot of things might appear to be that, but changing technology may shift it. So I happen to believe that this is very different from getting involved with propane or something like that. But I can understand that people who have been there and had to make those hard calls with whatever information was available at the time, feel pretty nervous about jumping into something else.
Yeah. And on a much smaller scale, we even see that in just little things like I wanted to offer I thought when I first started that it would be great if we offered some sort of like tech or device insurance thing. I was like, oh, this would be cool. We could do it through a third party. And they were like, listen, let me tell you what happened when we did something similar to this on the electric side years ago.
Right.
And it was, because part of being at a co-op is, if I sell you something, you're going to call us, or if you bought a TV that connects to the internet, even because you didn't buy it from us, you're still going to call us and go, why isn't my TV working? Can you help me figure it out? Why is this printer working? It connects to something that connects to the internet. And so we even in those conversations, we go, oh, okay, so that's not something we can do because we know that we can't really serve it or service it. And that's what people are going to want us to do. And, I can't. And again, that's like I say, way, way smaller scale. So I can't imagine trying to be at that larger scale trying to decide, okay, is this something that we really hang our hat on and go into for 20, 30 years, or is this something that we need to let go?
Yeah. No, I really appreciate your time today and your insights on everything from the specifics to Gibson Connect to some of the factors that go into the decision making around where to build the network and what products to offer and things like that. And I'll wrap up by saying we didn't record the part, but I wish you luck as the MLS playoffs approach with Nashville and the start of a new season with Liverpool.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for having us on. This is great to be here.
Excellent.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at communitynetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@communitynetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Blue Sky. His handle's @SportsShotChris. Follow Community Network's stories on Blue Sky. The handle's @CommunityNets. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. Catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Artie Huseby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons.